So we found the greatest common factor between two numbers, and we found the greatest common factors between terms that contain variables. Now what if I put the numbers and the variables together? Well, I'm going to do them just like I did the others. So the first thing I'm going to do is try to find the greatest common factor between the two numbers. So I have 20 and I have 15. Well, I like that because it's a 0 and a 5, so I think my greatest common factor is going to be 5. But let's work it out and see. So if I have 20, I have 1 and 20, 2 and 10, and 4 and 5. So I've got a 5 there. What about 15? I have 1 and 15, and 3 and 5. Well, my greatest common factor is 5. So I know that between the 15 and the 20, the greatest common factor is 5. Now let's go back to our variable rules. So I'm going to see what variables are in both terms. Well, I have an x here and I have an x here. So I know that my greatest common factor will have an x. I have a y here and I have a y here. So my greatest common factor will also contain a y. Now, I find the smallest exponent, the least exponent, on both of those variables. So my x has a 5 and a 3. 3 is the least, so my x will be 3. Y has a 2 and a 1. Remember, that's an understood 1 there. So 1 is the least, so I'll leave the y like it is. So my greatest common factor between these two terms is 5x to the third y. So what about this one? So what if I give you 6x to the fourth, y to the fourth, 8x third y, and 9xy to the fifth? So let's look at the numbers. Is there a common factor between 6, 8, and 9? It has to be all three. So it has to be common to all terms. Well, I have 6, 1, and 2, and 3. I have 8 and 1, 2, and 4. So I've got a 2 common between these. And I've got 9 and 1 and 3 and 3. Well, I have a 3 here and a 3 here and a 2 here and a 2 here, but I don't have anything common between all three numbers. So I can't say I have a common factor between all three numbers. That means I don't put a number down here. Now, what about my variables? Well, I have an x in all three, so I have an x. I have a y in all three, so I have a y. Now let's look at those exponents. I have a 4, I have a 3, and remember that's an understood 1, so I have a 1 over there on that x. So I just leave it as x because 1x is all I can pull out. I have a 4, a 1, and a 5. Well, 1's always the smallest number, right? So I have a 1. So my greatest common factor between all of this is just xy.